to say thank you to everyone for taking the time to talk about the website tender and the evaluation of that tender. So hopefully that's what you're all here for, that you're all in the right place. But this is indeed to talk about our website redesign and migration project, which we're all super excited about. So I have a couple housekeeping notes, and then I will sort of introduce the team of who's here from the EITI side. So in terms of housekeeping, this webinar is being recorded. So it will be available this afternoon after the webinar on our website. So that's something to know. I am putting into the chat that hopefully everyone can see a link to some of the questions that we have received so far with their answers. So those are available on our website if you haven't had a chance to look at them yet. The idea for today is I will cover some of those, but I will also cover some of the questions that we have gotten in the meantime. So ones that are not answered in that document. The plan is that anyone can use the Q&A function at the bottom and come in with their questions throughout the webinar. I will try to get through them as best I can. If there's for some reason any questions that we're not able to answer today or that we don't have time to get to today, then I will put that in a document and publish that on the website by tomorrow as well. So please feel free to add those questions, and if for some reason we're not able to get to them, then they will still be available on the website. So that's through Q&A. Everyone currently, aside from the EITI team, is on mute from my side. So if you have a question and I need some clarification, then I might ask you to come in on audio just to explain it a little bit better. That might happen if you're comfortable with that, but otherwise we'll just stick with the Q&A button. So those are the housekeeping things. I think I'll go ahead and introduce ourselves. So starting with me, my name is Rachel, and I am a communication officer at EITI. I've been working with EITI for almost a year now. It's gone by very quickly. I am in charge of the website primarily. I also have a few other tasks, but my big one is eiti.org, as well as this redesign and migration process. So while the implementation of this project will involve more team members than just me, of course, I would be the main point of contact that you would be working with at the International Secretariat. So hopefully that works for everybody. No, but so that's who I am. I'm also originally from the US, if that makes any difference. I will go ahead and introduce who I see next on my list in terms of who we are, which is Joanne. I'll stick with first names if you don't mind, team, just to keep it easy. But Joanne is currently based in the UK. I forgot to mention that I'm based in Oslo, in Norway, but Joanne is based in the UK and she is our communications director. And she's been with EITI for a little bit, I mean, a year and a half, maybe now, I think. So she's our communications director. Next to that on my screen, I see Gay, who is our Asia and Pacific director. Now you can see her video. So that's Gay. And then beside her is Chris, who is the part of our data team. You can wave, thank you. So he is a technical manager at EITI, but works a lot with our database and API. So a lot of some of the deliverables will also definitely overlap with his team. And then we have Layla, who also just came on with her video, and she is the other communication officer in charge of content and sort of everything that comes with that. It's a long list if I were to describe it out. And Layla, Joanne, and myself make up the communication team. So we're a team of 3. And Sam is at the very end, last but not least, who's the technical director and who has been with the EI for quite some time and also worked on some other website projects that we've had in the past. So we've had a good we've got a good group from the EITI here to answer questions and hopefully make things even more clear for potential applicants. Yeah, so that is the introductions. In terms of, I see a couple of questions on the chat on the side. One of them is about uploading questions that were sent yesterday. So I think I probably have them, but if you could put them in the chat, I think that would be helpful also, just so in the chat or in the Q&A so that everyone can see them. And then I also see that there's a question about the wireframe links within the Drupal doc. And those were actually updated. So I'm going to put the updated link in the chat, but those should work without needing a login, for example. All right, so I'm going to share my screen. Oh, I'm sorry, just 1 second. There we go. There we go. You could let me know if you can see the, yes, great. All right. So what we're going to cover today, today we are going to cover briefly the timeline, sort of go through the objectives of the website, briefly kind of talk about who we are, just to give an overview. I'd like to walk through the deliverables as we've defined them in the tender document, sort of give a little bit more background on what we're thinking with those, and also, of course, go through the questions that we've received so far. So in terms of timeline, what we're looking at is a deadline to apply of Sunday, the 15th of November. We are aiming to send out the award notice then by a week and a half later, Wednesday, the 25th. The hope is to agree on the contract details and sign in December so that work can start by the end of December or at the latest, the beginning of January. Also with the idea of the launch being in April of 2021. So in terms of because some of the questions were around the timeline, the deadline, of course, I think is fixed. But in terms of the launch, that is something that we have some flexibility around. That's something that we are definitely aiming for. So that is our goal, but we are flexible depending on what the winners of the bid feel is realistic. So that should not be something that deters you, I think, when submitting your implementation timeline, but it should be something that keep in mind as a guideline. And also other team members from EITI, please feel free to jump in whenever you feel like you need to. Yeah, so our website. So hopefully you've had a chance to look at our website already, had a chance to sort of figure out who we are. I think EITI can get quite complicated once we go through the line of everything that we do and everyone that is involved in that process. But I think the real starting point there is about promoting transparency and working towards transparency in the extractive industry. And so with that, what that means for us is that we work now with 55 different countries who have become members of the EITI. We work with a really diverse board, which includes Helen Clark, who's the former Prime Minister of New Zealand, as our board chair. And it also means that we work with the International Secretariat that's based in Oslo. On top of that, we have a lot of data and reports that are a priority for us to not only make available, but in the future really use to show not only the impact of EITI, but also what can be done with that data. And it's something that's, I think, been a focus since the beginning of the organization, but something that we are moving more and more towards, I think, in terms of finding new ways to show the data, as well as new ways to have people access the data. So that's also a big part of the tender, as I'm sure you've seen. So that's sort of us in a nutshell. It's a very quick look. This is really what I've just explained really goes into the website priorities that were outlined in the tender around showing the impact of the EITI, of making the data accessible and being able to show it, as well as showing the relevance of the EITI. So that's sort of where that links into the website objectives that are also available in the tender document. All right, so I see a couple questions here. Okay, these are the ones I'm guessing that you sent. Yeah. So I will get to those as we go through the questions. So to start with, because especially the first one has to do with multi-language, and that's the first thing on the list here. The deliverables are in a little bit of a different order in the tender document, but I've sort of grouped it a little bit differently here just to make it easier to explain. So one of our deliverables is around the navigation and user experience of the website in our 4 languages, which are English, Spanish, French, and Russian. And currently, the reason why that's such an issue is, and this relates to another question that we received, is that the way we have it set up now is we work with a translation company. We don't use a translation software, but we work with an actual company of translators to translate some things on the site, but not all. Per our governance guidelines, any sort of key document has to be available in English and French. However, non-key documents, it's more of a case-by-case basis. And for Spanish and Russian, it's always a case-by-case basis. So as an example, when Ecuador became a member of the EITI, then that was relevant, obviously, to have that news in Spanish, but we don't always have everything available in Spanish or Russian. In fact, I'm not sure what the percentage is, to be honest, but the percentage is quite low of what's available in Spanish and Russian on the site. So the problem there is that if you are a non-English speaker and trying to navigate through our site, the way it's set up currently is that it sort of flips you back and forth between English pages and the non-English pages. It's not clear which documents are available in which languages. And so it's something that it's a priority for us to work on and to fix. The biggest caveat there is that we do not have the capacity or the budget to translate everything into these 4 languages. So that is not an option for us moving forward. So we have to have some sort of in-between solution there. So the question I'm going to read from the Q&A is that, is the multi-language requirement to have a full site language switch, including menus, headers, and footers in each language? Will other languages be added in the future? So for the first part of the question, the answer is yes. And that is how it's set up now. All of our menus, headers, and footers, for the most part, sort of all of our strings are translated at least in English and French, but in a lot of places in all 4 languages. So that would be the expectation moving forward. We have, in part of our user research, also talked to a lot of other organizations about what their language solutions are. Some with using Google Translate, some with only directing users to parts of the site that are in their specific language. I think neither of those we found to be completely acceptable. We need some sort of middle solution there. But either way, it would still require, especially navigational elements, to be available in all 4 of the languages. And will other languages be added in the future? That remains to be seen. I can't say no for sure. I think in the next year, I have not heard anything related to adding another language. So I think in the short to medium term, the answer is no, but it could be possible in the future later on, depending on what our needs are. So next one, upgrade the, so I hope that answers that. The next one is upgrade the navigation, organization, and design of our guidance section to improve uptake of guidance and resources for implementing countries. So currently we have, in order to help countries implement our requirements, or the EITI standard, as we call it, we have a lot of guidance and we have a lot of good content in order to help support the countries. And we have a lot of good content that is coming, that's in the pipeline as well. So from the content side, I think we're really set, but from the how this part of the site is organized, it's very confusing. You often sort of get trapped in sort of either a million links or some sort of rabbit hole where it's hard to figure out how to get out or how to get back to the main part of the website, or even just back to where you were a couple pages before. This is really, for us, it's really important because supporting implementing countries, I mean, this is one of our top target audiences. Like, this is one of the top roles for the website. So this is really important to get this done. The third one is meet all WCAG A and AA accessibility requirements. Hopefully that's pretty obvious. We're not currently meeting those requirements. I know in Drupal 9, there are some things around the alt text for photos. That means that it's required, as opposed to now where with Drupal 7, it's not required. So that will fix some of those, but hopefully that's clear about accessibility. Incorporate modern design and visual elements into the site. And that sort of goes into also the graphic element on the homepage. So I think we were quite happy with the site when we redid it several years ago for this version. But I think what we're getting at with modern is that there are obviously some new trends and some new visual ways to show navigation, to show the structure of the site, to engage users. And so that's part of what we're looking for. And the graphic element on the homepage that is outlined in the prototype, but we're looking for a sort of, I'd say an amped up version of that, maybe times 50. So I see Joe smiling. So that's hopefully close to what she was thinking too. So that's definitely something else to discuss.
Absolutely. And just to come in there, definitely, I think within the prototypes, if you go through them in a little bit of detail, you'll see that we've outlined some of the user experience that we would like to reflect on the new sites, and also some of the, although these are prototypes and not in any sense mock-ups or designs, you'll also see that we've done quite a lot of thinking around what the site can look like, and obviously also looking for good ideas and good interaction with future developers on those ideas.
Exactly. I was just looking through, we've got a lot of really good questions here. So I think, and a lot of these are really relevant to this next slide. Maybe I'll explain this next slide and then just start going through the questions so we don't get too sidetracked here. Okay, so the next part of deliverables I've grouped together as part of data. So the first one is increasing the accessibility of our data by offering multiple formats for bulk download. So currently, the way our data is available on the site is either through the API or through our summary data sheets that are available through a Google Drive. And those are sort of one file per country. So one thing from the user research that we've done that's shown is really the user sort of demand for having both a filter option, but also an option to be able to download all of the data in an easier format than having to go through the API, because the API, I think for most users is quite intimidating. So that's really more for the most advanced level of user. The second one is to update the database and API for backwards compatibility. So I'll probably bring Chris in a minute for some of these questions, just as a heads up. But so in terms of what we input into the database, one of the things is our summary data sheets. And we had an update to our summary data, sort of a 2.0 version. And some of the names, and I might be not saying the right word there, Chris, do not match up in a way that allows it to be backwards compatible. So that's something that needs to be updated on the new site. Update hard-coded data visualizations. I'm going to start with that one first. So we currently, all of our data visualizations, except for on the funding page, are hard-coded at the moment. So that's eiti.org/countries, as well as on our individual country pages. Like if you go to eiti.org/Ghana, for example, then you'll see several visualizations there. And those are hard-coded and pull automatically from our API. So we would like an update to those, but our plan is at the moment to keep the eiti.org/countries, as well as the production volume visualizations on those country pages. And what we're really looking for is, so let me back up. So those are what we want to keep. The reason why we don't want to keep everything is because I'm sure, as everyone in this group definitely knows, that hard coding visualizations is very expensive. It's a long process. It's then very hard for us to update. And so what we're really looking for is sort of a next level tool that we can use to be able to still pull automatically, either from the API or from the database, so that they update automatically, but also something that we can update on our own without having to change the code every time. So the second part to this is that we're looking for support in embedding a third-party visualization tool like Flourish, Tableau, Data Wrapper, or Power BI. We currently have someone on the data team who is working on an internal tool through Power BI. But I think after some more research, the price involved with Power BI is going to be outside of our scope. So we're more looking for something like Flourish, Tableau, or Data Wrapper. But that being said, we are very open and I think need the expertise and advice from whoever wins this bid on what would be the best way to move forward with a tool like that. And recommendations on which tool that would also be very, very welcome, because we will need support on both. Data visualizations up to this time have been something that we've been sort of trying to creep into, but we're not full speed ahead yet, I guess I would say, in terms of our internal capacity. So this is something that we really need support on, both with advice on updates to the hard-coded part, but also in how to set up and what would be the best way forward with a third-party tool.
If I may just jump in briefly there, I
yes.
think just to sum up a little bit on our requirements, what we're looking for is an agile tool that's also enables us to be relatively flexible and to keep our visualizations updated as the organization moves forward into new areas.
Thanks, Jill. And the last one is maintaining the website on a secure platform and in compliance with data regulations. Hopefully that's not anything crazy for anybody in this group. So that's my piece. I'm going to go ahead and go through the questions now, since we have so many of them. The next one is, how is the automation for generating CMS content expected to be built? Are we talking about importing data from CSV and auto-generating content for relevant content types based on the imported CSV JSON data? Or are we talking about an external API that the site uses to pull the content from? So I'll say what I think, and Chris, you can come in if I make any mistakes. So in terms of how our workflow works now is that we ask the countries that we work with to fill out the summary data templates, which are CSV files or Excel files. And then we upload them into Drupal from our side, which then goes into the database, which then is linked by the API into our data visualizations. So that's my understanding of how that works. Hopefully that answers the question. But our expectation is still to be able to upload the data from our side using the Excel sheets. So the next one, can we get more details on validating data and what aspects should the validation take into account? Currently, how has this been implemented? So there, I think I'm not quite positive what you mean by validating data. Maybe can I ask you, Ged, to come in and I'll unmute your mic here. I can't do that and share my screen at the same time, apparently. Would you mind coming in and explaining what you meant by that?
Hi. I think this is the question from us. So it was picked up from one of the specification from your tender data. It's about validation data is inputted into our website following an assessment of a member country. This assessment results in scorecards that are available through board decision and on the country pages of each member country. So that's why there was no much of a clarity of validation, what validation is related to, whether it's the CSV files or whether some sort of other functionality that's not very clear on this context.
I see. Okay, thank you. That makes it more clear. So we do have two different ways that we input data. So one is through the summary data files that I was talking about previously, and the other is from validation. And that is, so the validation process is basically us or an assessment of whether the countries have met the requirements that are outlined in the EITI standard. So for us, it's quite an important process for not only keeping countries as members, but also sort of setting the standard as part of what being a member means globally. So those are the two types of data that we have on the site. The validation data is also inputted through the Drupal CMS, but is not inputted with CSV files. So it's inputted manually.
Cool, that makes perfect sense.
Okay, great. Yep. So I will take you back off here. So the next one is, can you outline user management requirements and permissions levels to access, view certain sections of the website in both back and front ends? So I think that is something that is outlined outlined in the tender document. In terms of the full admin access, that would only be for the developers and for probably 2 people on the comms team, myself and one extra sort of emergency person. In terms of general editing of the website, one thing that's unique about EITI is that everyone that works at the International Secretariat has access to the back end of the website and to the CMS system and edits the website at one point or another. This depends on the role. So some people do it more than others, but it is necessary that we have that general editors are able to edit quite a lot. But that is spelled out in the technical requirements document as well. And then, so the next one is downloadable JSON CSV files. Should the files from different formats automatically generated by the CMS or the site editors manually upload the files for the end users to download? So if I understood that correctly, I think that kind of goes back to what we were saying before. So we have the summary data files that are available individually on our Google Drive currently. The idea of sort of the bulk download would be that this would be all of the data together, and then you would be able to filter it and essentially compare different aspects of the data, or just download it all together so that you could analyze it on your own. Okay, the next question is, can you please expand upon the data itself? Where do you get the data from, the source, and what are some use cases? So I think I've explained a little bit about that already, in that the countries, as being a member of the EITI, they have requirements to make certain data available, both through their EITI reports that are usually once a year, as well as through filling out the summary data templates that we send to them. So that's one of the sources. The other is the validation data, which I also talked about. So some of the use cases there, I think I've also put some examples in the document about user research. But we have a lot of international organizations, for example, that are looking to get contextual information about the extractives industry in specific countries, that are looking for sort of long-term data on things like contract disclosure, revenues. So it's a lot of different points. So I won't go into all of them, but it's a lot. So for our data, the more advanced users are definitely the international organizations that are looking to compare the data or to use the data in their own reports and analysis. And on a local level, I think people are also, or maybe not local, but national level, people are also hopefully using this data to inform policy and to be able to use as part of their research into policy measures as well. All right.
Perhaps worth mentioning too, there's quite a large uptake of data use from academic researchers, for instance, as these are data sets that can be quite useful in research, as well as the use cases that Rachel's already mentioned. And of course, the list doesn't stop there. Civil society organizations use this data on country level and comparative analysis. Yeah, so I think we've outlined the main ones, but certainly that's not an exhaustive list.
Definitely not. Thanks, Joe. So the next question was about what is the platform we're currently using for our visualizations. I think I covered that, aside from on our funding page where we're using a program called Infogram, but we're not married to that platform. I think that's been something that's just been on the funding page for now. The next one is on hard-coded visualizations. So is it hard-coded as part of the website code or actually embedded within individual content items and stored in the database? So my understanding is that it's actually hard-coded into the website code. However, we do have them as sort of paragraph types, and that's how we add them to the pages. So I'm not actually sure whether that's embedded into content items and hard-coded, or if that's a combination of those, but that's our process, is that it is actually in the code, but we use them as paragraph types on our website when we have them. So search, does the site currently use Drupal native search, and or what improvements are expected from what you have currently? So in terms of whether it's Drupal native search or not, that's something I'm going to have to come back and put in the sheet for tomorrow. Because I'm not positive about that one. But in terms of improvements on what we expect, we are expecting a lot of improvements on the search. I think it's not obviously just the search itself. I think there's a lot of tagging issues on our website and some sort of organizational issues as well. So that we expect to be cleaned up with the new site. But we are also expecting I think more clear parameters, as well as more refined search results. So that's something to go through with the winners of the bid as well. API backwards compatibility. It seems like the API is currently built in Drupal 7 and the new site is going to be in Drupal 9. Is the new site meant to be the version 3 of the API? Are you concerned if contents are exact same or if it's just the format? The new site is not meant to be version 3 of the API. The update in terms of backwards compatibility, I would not describe as being a whole new version. However, the contents do need to be the exact same in terms of, well, I don't know if they need to be the exact same, but they need to still be able to feed the hard-coded visualizations the same. So my understanding is that how the database will be structured will be simplified in Drupal 9 because of how Drupal 9 is structured. But the API still needs to pull in the same way that it's pulling now to our hard-coded visualizations. Number 12, the solution is to be built on latest version of Drupal 9 CMS on a LAMP stack. Front end should use Bootstrap 4. Search on Elasticsearch. Solution will be hosted on AWS. Why is the requirement for Bootstrap? That's a great question. I'm not positive what the answer is to that at the moment, so I will add that to the list to cover in the questions document that will be available tomorrow. So the next one, AWS is an unmanaged service. Have you considered how this will be managed? So currently we have a hosting contract with a separate company, and that contract will continue throughout the development of this next project. So our hosting and sort of management of our servers is already under control, or that's already taken advantage of. That's not a part of this tender. Can you kindly clarify if there's a rigid proposal format we must follow, or do we have flexibility? So I think you have flexibility in how you would like to answer it, but it is, I mean, we are expecting the documents that we outline in the tender document. So I think there are quite clear specifications about what you need to provide for both the technical and the budget parts of the financial parts of the application. So if there's something else that you feel needs to be added, I would say that would be fine, but I would not recommend leaving out parts of what we have said that we wanted. Okay, so the next one. HTML templates on page 35, a little more explanation. Okay, let me see if I can look at page 35 here. I'm assuming that you mean on the Figma prototypes. While that's loading, let me go to the next question. Create a user manual and provide a minimum 2 trainings for staff on editing the new site, video conference, or on-site, considering the circumstances we are dealing with. I think at this point, if we are looking at April launch of next year, I think it is completely reasonable to assume that that this is going to be over video. So I think in a perfect world, COVID would be over and we could talk about doing something in person, but I don't find that to be realistic at this point. So my expectation, I don't know if you have a different one, Jill, but would be that this would be over video unless something drastically changes.
No, that would be exactly my expectation. That it would be over video.
Yeah. And so now I'm looking at, yeah, at 35 of the analysis. Following HTML templates will be created and are choosable to use in the text editor. Yeah, so what this means with the analysis or the technical analysis is that the following items need to have a little bit more structure and would need to be a drop down or an option when you're choosing this content type. So when you tried to create a new page, you would have some sort of field that you would choose that would be either a supporter page or a board decision or Yeah, I think, actually, I don't think it would be board decision. I think it would just be about the supporters pages and potentially the homepage. So number 3, validation data and scorecard. Given the fact that you're planning to change the scoring and assessment and assessing countries, we understand that it should not be included in the estimate, but will be estimated separately in January 2021. Is that correct? Yes, I would say that's correct. I think the only caveat is if this information from our side was available, like if this project was wrapped up sooner than that, then we would give it to the winners of the bid sooner. To be able to plan out. But otherwise, I think that will be in January 2021. 4, it is said that version 1 might need to be taken down of the API. So do we have to implement both versions of API in Drupal 9? That is a good question. I, at this point, do not think I think both versions would be needed in Drupal 9, but I think this is something that we would need to clarify and come back to. So company requirements. Can the case studies be white labeled? I think Alice, you would have to tell me what you mean by white labeled. So I'm going to let you come in here if you don't mind to just address what you meant.
Yeah, hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you, but it's very soft.
What about now?
Yes, now is better.
Okay, so let's say that we worked for a client whose name is, because of the NDAs and so on, we cannot disclose the name. We did the project, we just can't tell you it was done for, I don't know, someone who are we prohibited to say the name because NDA prohibits us?
I mean, I think Joe, also feel free to come in, or Sam. From my side, I think if you explain that, that would be sufficient. I guess I wouldn't expect all of your examples to come from,
no.
Yeah. But if there was one example where you were not able to say the name, as long as that was explained from my side, I think that's sufficient.
Yeah, I'd say exactly the same thing. Certainly not all of the examples can be, case studies can be white labeled, but if there are some that you want to describe to us and that have to be white labeled because of your NDA with the clients, then perhaps you can describe the company, the client, describe their needs in a way that's synonymous. That would be completely sufficient. Thanks.
Maybe to go back to, if I may, the technical score presents 70%, and there is this line there: service capability to Oslo UK team accounts for 20% of it. Does that go in what we talked about on-site or video conference?
That's a great question. That was, we've had several questions about sort of working hours and how that works with a company that might not be based within our time zone. So we are currently located, where the main team is located between Oslo and the UK. So there does have to be a capability for service at some point during a chunk of our working hours. However, we are open to being flexible on as to what that means. So in terms of timing, if you were 6 hours ahead or behind, we could work on what core sort of hours that covered. In terms of in-person things, I think if you would have asked me before March, I would have said that at least one sort of in-person chunk would be necessary for this project. However, given the current times that we're in, I'm not expecting, I mean, Joe also or Sam come in, but I'm not expecting anybody to be able to be in person before June of next year, let's say. until after the launch of this project. I don't know if you saw from our videos or our waving of hands, but we are all working from home. Norway is having everyone work from home currently, and the UK had a lockdown that started today. So even if you were in Norway, we would not actually be able to meet either. So, so Sam or Joe, feel free to come in, but I think given the current situation, it would not be intended for the launch of the project. I think for long-term maintenance and other projects that might come in the future, I think it would be important, given that if it were safe, for the ability to be able to meet in person at some point. But that's more of a longer term thing.
Absolutely. Given the circumstances we face today and the time frame of this project, we would not anticipate a face-to-face meeting prior to launch. If it happens, clearly that's a bonus as far as I'm concerned, but certainly not an anticipation at this stage. And certainly we're looking for a supplier that can spend a chunk of working time during the day in the same on a, in our time zone, that has a common, substantial overlap with our time zone, but not necessarily sitting in the same time zone.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Okay, so I see we've gotten through a lot of the questions, so I'm excited about that. But I'm going to go back to my slides here, and I think I'll just go back. And go through a couple of the expectations here, because I think the next questions have more to do with sort of the process and sort of less technical things so far. So in terms of the last group of deliverables, excuse me, we are expecting, so what we've done so far, as you can see from the technical requirements document, is we have done a lot of user research. We've also done workshops to both internally and externally to try to figure out what our biggest needs are from the site. And from that, we have the prototypes that you can click on that you've seen so far. However, from our side, these prototypes are still just the start of the process. So maybe not the start, but sort of the base of the process. So we are expecting to work with the winners of the bid to continue this process and to create high fidelity mockups of the main section of the website and also final designs that we would then sort of sign off on before implementation started. So this also means, I think there was a question about a period of discovery that was added. So I think that also feeds into this. One of the things that we're expecting to feed into this process is sort of a look at the user research that we've done so far, kind of identifying what gaps or what else needs to be filled in order to get to the next stage of mockups and the final design. We're not expecting a huge discovery period because of the user research that's been done to date, but that does not mean that we're not open to filling in gaps as we need to. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think that question is from Ged, and the way you phrased it there, Ged, given that you have undertaken user research, are you open to a focused piece of discovery that feeds a functional specification document? I think the key word in that sentence is focused. We've done a lot of user research. We have reasonably clear idea of what we want, and we're open to a future supplier working with us to identify if there are gaps in that research, and if so, whether we need to fill them. But that's something we'll take up as we progress through the project. I think we feel we've done quite a lot of research, and that research is also continuing and ongoing as we speak.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So that hopefully explains that process a little bit more. I think the migration from 7 to 9 is quite self-explanatory. we're expecting to have a beta version of the website, or at least some sort of staging version of the website in order to test for bugs and functionality, both within our team, but also with users. That was another question, was about the availability for user research with the next sort of final designs. And that is available. That's something also that we would expect. We do have access to stakeholders within our countries that are members, as well as we have quite a few users that have agreed to further user research from the original user research that we did that come from several different of our target user groups. So that is definitely possible or expected, I would say. Launching the new website without bugs, creating the user manual we've also talked about, and maintenance and support for the website for 2021. So I have mentioned that our hosting will be taken care of by a separate company. However, maintenance and support to the website is something that is a part of this tender as well. So that is something that should be outlined in your applications. So we've got just a few more minutes left. So I wanted to go to some of the questions that I had gotten in advance that we have not covered yet, and especially because this first sort of question, I think, is hinting at a question we've gotten several times. And the question is this a mandatory requirement to do this RFP from time to time? And the fast answer there is we're not required to do a request for proposals from time to time on the website. We do, however, as a donor-funded organization, feel like it's important as sort of responsibility to our donors and transparency in general, that because of the size and budget of this project, that it does need to be an open sort of public tender. So that from our side was something that we felt was important. One thing I would like to stress, though, is that we are very committed to this being a public and open process. And we are very committed to getting the best providers for us for the website moving forward. So I hope that does not stop anybody or sort of deter anybody from applying for this, because this is definitely an open process, and we are really looking for the most talented developers to be able to help us with our new site. So that's the focus for us.
That's absolutely right. And, you know, if the question here is this a genuine tender process, then the answer is a resounding yes. This is a very substantial project for the ITI Secretariat, and we're concerned both to get an excellent developer and also obviously great value for money, given that we're a donor-funded organization. So I hope that addresses that concern there. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Jill. The next one is about technical and architectural documentation available for the Drupal 7 site about how it was configured. So the short answer there is no, that we do not have that documentation per se. However, I do want to point out that all of our code is available on GitHub. I think that's also linked from the tender document. And as part of starting up with this process, we are more than welcome or more than happy to walk through the website, walk through our workflows, walk through the back end of our website to make sure that it's clear for whoever wins the bid about how the site is configured. So hopefully that's clear. In terms of modules and custom modules, actually, I'm going to skip those two because those are basically just numbers ones, and I think that's easiest if I just put it in the Word document. Sorry. Is there a specific reason on the date for the launch? I think that also goes to the last question that I see in the Q&A about flexibility with the timeline. So the reason for the date for the launch is, I think, well, one, we feel like this is an ambitious timeline, but we think it is a possible timeline. So that's part of why it's our goal. with wanting to get this launched. I think the second part to that is that we have a board meeting in June of 2021. That would be a great opportunity to launch the site. However, we feel strongly that launching the site right before the board meeting is usually just a recipe for disaster. So having a beta version of the site to test, then being able to launch the site and have a couple months where we're able to work with the site and update the site and continue that before it's really launched at the board meeting in June, that I think is the safest approach. That being said, we are flexible with the timeline. I think we said that at the beginning of the webinar. So it does not have to be April 1st. That is what we are shooting for. So I would not expect to see suggestions of September 1st, but we are flexible in terms of the timeline. So we would like to see what applicants think is the most realistic and how that's explained. And then the last one here is, what are your main priorities migrating to Drupal 9? Security maintenance or Drupal 7 end of life, or Drupal 9 features? If yes, what specific features? So the main priority with migrating was basically to avoid security issues after Drupal 7 reaches its end of life. So that was sort of the main push of why this started. There are several Drupal 9 features that I think we are particularly excited about, but they were not reasons for migrating. The migration was really pushed by the end of life. So just to say some of the features that we're excited about, I think one of them is having the ability to add different paragraph types to all different sorts of pages. I also think the user interface from the CMS side for our internal editors, having something like the Gutenberg module is just one example. We're not married to that one, but I think there's several different modules out there now for Drupal 9 that make editing much more user-friendly than what we currently have. So that was another thing that we are looking forward to, I would say, in terms of Drupal 9. All right. So we are 1 minute till. So I think, so for the modules and custom modules, I have those numbers, but I think I will just put them on the Word document that I post tomorrow. I hope this webinar has been helpful. I would encourage everybody to still reach out with questions if any urgent questions pop up between now and, say, next Wednesday or next Thursday. To please feel free to contact me, and I will try to answer those as soon as possible and have them published on our website. So please feel free to do that. But I hope this was helpful, and please look out for the webinar recording that will come up just within the next hour, and then the questions and answers that I will post on the website tomorrow. I don't know if from my team, if there's anything else you'd like to add.
I think I'd just like to say thank you, Rachel, for pulling this all together. I think many of you have been emailing Rachel with questions, and by all means do continue to do that. And we will continue to add those written questions and answers to the Q&A sheet on the website so that they can be viewed by all potential tender applicants and obviously all participants on this call. Thank you, Rachel. I hope that was clear and explanatory.
I hope so too, and happy application writing or proposal writing, and we look forward to reviewing them. So thank you, everyone.
Sorry,
have a great day.
I don't understand.